Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Premier Life podcast. I'm Dr. Mark, and following up on one of the topics that we covered in our most recent workshop a few weeks ago from our Nature's Ozempic, people have come in with some really great questions, and they center around the topic of the metabolic and environmental toxins that we briefly touched on. So I thought this was a pretty important topic and just thought maybe it might be a good idea to take a little bit of time to just clarify. And let's just kind of go over this stuff again, maybe just a little more in depth. It won't be super deep dive, but hopefully this will clear up some of the questions and just let us see just how important this is and the amount of toxic exposure that we're all dealing with just every day in our everyday lives. So as of now, just in our regular everyday life, we're exposed to an average of 86,000 toxic chemicals every day. So the FDA lists the potential toxins that are man-made, that are environmentally active, and we're up to around 86,000. Now, out of those 86,000 chemicals, only 1% of those have been tested for efficacy or to look at their safety profile. That's 1% out of those 86,000 so far. The FDA has had this capability since 1976. And since that time, the FDA has only classified or labeled 9 of these toxic substances out of these 86,000 that are listed as banned substances. So we have 9 banned substances. On average, it's also estimated just in our daily lives. Now, this is not the environmental exposure that we have. This is just our personal consumption. That the average American is using at least 25 gallons of toxic-laden substance every year. Now, that will include things like our drinking water. That will include things like our soap, our makeup, our cleaning supplies, shampoos, deodorants, those sorts of things. So you can see just by our nature of just getting through life and using the products that we use every day, our toxic burden is quite big. Now, taking aside the personal use and that 25 gallons per year per person, we release at least 10 million tons of toxic waste into our environment every year. Now, to put that into perspective, maybe a little bit different number, that's 20 billion pounds per year of toxic waste that we're releasing into our environment. That's the fertilizers we're putting on our grass, what we're putting in our crops, what we're releasing into the air, exhaust fumes. And so these things are, they're just everywhere, and we really can't get away from that exposure. So in a little bit, we're going to talk about some of the things we can do to start minimizing our exposure and just what exactly do with all these things that are in our environment. So first of all, what's the big deal about toxins? What do they do anyway? So there's a list of different types of groups of toxins, but just generally what we're going to do is going to break these down into real simple things just for us to kind of make sense of them. So we have some toxins that are listed as endocrine disruptors. In fact, most of these toxins, these 86,000 toxins that we're talking about, will all function on some level as an endocrine disruptor. Now, what an endocrine disruptor means is that it's essentially impacting our hormones, whether it's thyroid hormone or adrenal hormone or serotonin or dopamine or estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. Those things are disrupted as a result of our body's exposure to these toxins. Then we have other toxins that are primarily classified as obesogens. Now, what that means is that these toxins not only can cause our body to put on weight or hold weight and store that weight in our fat tissue and our nerve tissue and our muscles and our organs, but it also makes it very difficult for our body to be able to mobilize those toxins back out, meaning that those obesogens not only get into our body and can cause us to hold on to weight and gain weight, but it makes it almost impossible for our body to be able to effectively eliminate those. And a lot of times we see that when people come in And they may have a concern about weight loss and inability for weight loss. And one of the things that we have to look at is that toxic load that people are dealing with. Another classification or another group is generally regarded as carcinogenic, meaning that these are the chemicals that we're exposed to that are linked to cancer risk. And then we have another broad category that we're going to talk about, number 4, which would be neurodegenerative. Now, these are the ones that get in and specifically can impact our nervous system, whether it's out in our body or even in our brain. And in fact, as studies continue to progress to see just how this is impacting our health, it's now found that these toxins that we're exposed to and that we're ingesting and that we're breathing and that we're putting onto our skin with our cosmetics and our personal care, these things are actually now accumulating in our brain. They're accumulating in our lungs. They're accumulating in our hearts. And primarily, again, in our things like our liver and our kidneys. Those are what we call our detoxification organs. So our body is able to help to eliminate some of this burden. But at this point, we're just subject to so much ongoing barrage of these toxic chemicals in our environment that our body just can't handle that load. And some of these things are very difficult to get out. In fact, there's a group of chemicals that just this one group of chemicals consists of 5,000 different individual different chemicals. And these are called PFAs. It's a big long word, so we're just going to stick with PFAs. Now, these particular group of chemicals are all of those things we talked about. They are endocrine disruptors, they're obesogens, they're carcinogens, and they're also neurodegenerative agents. These PFAs are called forever chemicals because these chemicals, these PFAs, these man-made chemicals that are in our environment and that we're dealing with every day, these don't degrade in nature, like ever. And if you read certain articles that talk about the breakdown of these chemicals, the best you'll find on PFA degeneration and breakdown and clearing itself from our environment is thousands of years. Thousands of years. So these things are pretty nasty. And these are the types of things that we are finding specifically in our blood work. We're finding it in the stool samples. And like I said, we're finding it in these detox organs and even in our brain and in our nervous tissue. So we're starting to accumulate, and there are researchers and authors who now call us cyborgs because we're no longer independent from the toxins that we've produced because now they're incorporated into us. And a big part of that, and one of the components that we're going to talk about here just a little bit more in depth, is plastics. So this concept of plastics and microplastics and nanoplastics and the way that plastics break down or the way that plastics leak into our food. And so, we can talk about doing a little bit better by just not drinking water out of plastic bottles and eliminating our plastic foodware and eliminating plastic Tupperware and not microwaving food in plasticware where you're just mobilizing this stuff directly into the food you're about to eat. And by the way, you shouldn't microwave your food anyway. But this stuff, it's hard to get away from. This is the stuff that's in our flame retardant materials in our clothes, nylon and polyester that we use in clothing, outgassing from our chairs. That's where all of this stuff comes from. And our body's ability to eliminate that at best is decades to be able for our body to clear that out. And that's assuming that we're not dealing with those chemicals that are actually not being able to get cleared out and are now lodging in our organs and in our tissues. So again, I just want you to kind of get a feel for the fact that this is something that really we no longer can get away from. It is part of our reality. We've created such a toxic environment, everything from our cleaning solutions for our home to our cleaning solutions for ourselves, to the clothes that we wear. So what we need to do is now talk about some actionable steps, or what can we do to minimize our risk from these things that we're all going to be exposed to. So one of the things we can do are just make simple steps. Remember, we just want to start small because over time, small steps can lead to big impacts on our health. So a lot of people will also say, hey, well, do I just have to throw everything away? Should I just throw over and start over? And for some people, that's okay. But for a lot of people, that's not reasonable. So what we say is, as you start to work through your laundry detergent or your home cleaners or your deodorant or your cosmetics or your self-care, any of your self-care things that you might use at home, just replace them with better choices. There are now more and more companies who have very clean products that don't have all these chemicals laden into them. They're using more organic-based products and essential oil-based products that aren't going to have those toxic side effects and have that bioaccumulation in our body, disrupting all aspects of our metabolism, impacting all aspects of our nervous system. And sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. And it's just like, well, okay, that sounds great, but how do I know how to do that? Well, what I want to share with you are a couple sites that make this really easy. One site is called the Environmental Working Group, EWG. You can find them online. You can just go to any search engine that you like and pull that straight up. They have a great list, and they can actually help you with companies and talk to you about what chemicals might be toxic, what things might be better choices. There's another one that's called Clearya, and that is CLEARYA. Same concept here. It's just, and you can load these apps on your phone as well. They all have an app you can use. So you can just carry it with you. And sometimes you can even scan your item that you're going to buy, and that app will put up for you and score for you and tell you just where that falls on the clean versus not so clean aspects of the things that we're going to use every day. And that's for everything from food to the packaging that the food uses, to our clothes, to our house cleaners and detergents. It's just super easy to use. The other one I'm going to mention is called Yucca. It's YUKA. Another great app. You can put that on your phone, or you can just look it up online. And again, you can carry that with you on your phone. You can scan products right into it. They'll give you recommendations, better recommendations, and they'll actually score the products that you're looking at. And that's very helpful for you. So those three resources are just an encyclopedia in your pocket. So it makes it really easy for you to start to learn how to do this and have a little more independence and a surety on how to do your shopping. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. Again, like I say, just a kind of a little bit deeper dive, but not too in depth. And I think the important thing is just to see that this is not something that we can get away from any longer, but we can minimize our own exposures. And we can do things to start helping to minimize our own risk from having these toxic chemicals take a place within our own biochemistry in our own nervous system. So I hope that was helpful. Great to see you guys again. As always, if you have questions in the clinic for me or any of the doctors, please feel free to ask. And great to see you, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.